So welcome everybody. This is the first rendition of the PositiveCorey podcast. I don't even know if that's ultimately what it's going to be called, but today that's what we're calling it. We have a really special guest joining us this evening. His name is Rob Carney. So Rob, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, in my pronunciation here, but is a Chek holistic lifestyle coach, Reiki practitioner, meditation and mindfulness teacher and writer. He's the founder of Whole Health Connections, which is committed to connecting the dots to wellness. And with a network of the best holistic health practitioners in the area, along with his own knowledge, he's changing the way that we approach health and wellness. And most recently, he published his booklet, which if you stay until the end of the podcast today, each of you will receive a free copy of his new booklet on stress control, the 37 strategies to lower your stress, which is available in digital or hard copy on his website at www.wholehealthconnects.com. And before introducing Rob more formally and having him start to speak and getting the podcast rolling, just want to say that the purpose of this podcast is to interview lifestyle coaches, self-improvement coaches, and really promote their philosophies, their learnings, their teachings, and really helping the audience out there following PositiveCorey and the different quotes and motivation, inspirational messages that I'm sharing on a daily basis, and sharing other philosophies that relate to you in your life to really improve and be the best that you can be. So Rob, I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted to add there on your intro, but I'm certainly excited to jump into our conversation today.
Yeah, I think you nailed it pretty well in the head there. So I won't stall anymore. We'll get right going.
Perfect. Well, appreciate you being the number one guy, man. You're the first person to be on the PositiveCorey podcast, and yeah, super excited. And really, the first question that I have is, how did you get into this industry? Because Reiki practitioner, meditation, mindfulness, it's something that I know that I do, but I don't do enough of it. So I'm wondering, what prompted you to get into this?
So that's definitely a question that is asked fairly often. I think it's a very fair question. So it all really started for me when I was 18, just turned 18. I had a concussion summer going to my senior year of high school. And I was a 3-sport athlete in high school and all that. So then I couldn't do physical activity for a number of months. And I was kind of like, what do I do? And I couldn't exercise. I couldn't do all these things I normally did. And someone along the way was like, have you ever tried yoga? And of course, at the time I was like, oh no, I've never done that. But then I tried it and I was like, wow, this is life changing. This is so cool. This is a way to move that's more of a recovery and more of kind of not so angular and not so active and exerting, but more of a fluid way of moving the body. And to me, I kind of got drawn in. And then along the way, I went to University of New Hampshire my first 2 years of college before transferring to UMass Amherst. And I was the first guy to join the UNH Yoga Club. And of course, at first, people were looking like, are you in the right place?
Yeah,
this
exactly.
this is all girls in here. So that was kind of the start of everything there. And then we had a lady from India come in as a guest teacher for one of the classes, and she taught meditation. And that was the first time I've ever done it when I was at that time 19. And I was like, God, there's something to this. There's like something that is, my whole brain was just in this weird, only way I can describe it, is a weird state that I'd never felt before. And I was like, but it felt good and it felt relaxing. And again, having had this concussion and having been an athlete, and I never was really able to slow my mind down, which I think a lot of us in a social media age have trouble with because we're always stimulated. So this
Definitely.
was just, to me, I was like, God, this is awesome. So I ended up kind of following out to her. She was a little old Indian lady, and I helped her carry her stuff out to her car just so I'd have more of a chance to talk to her. So we were just talking, and she kind of gave me some material to look after. And then at that point, I started getting into neuroscience and psychology, nutrition. I was taking classes in that. Then eventually those kind of led me into food and sustainable food and farming practices. So really learning from the ground up how to take care of the planet and ourselves, and kind of how all that works together, and how we really are all connected from the ground up.
Yeah.
And along that way, I always knew I wanted to help people, and I actually almost enlisted in the Army National Guard out of high school. Luckily, I did not. I ended up doing Air Force ROTC my first semester. I also realized it wasn't for me. Did some on-call firefighting for almost 3 years. So I always knew I wanted to do some sort of helping, some sort of service. But every step was just kind of figuring out, all right, it wasn't the Army, it wasn't the Air Force, it wasn't the firefighting.
Right.
And then I started interning with nutritionists in the area, working with acupuncturists, massage therapists, just really diving into this world of things that seemed to help me for my issues I was dealing with. Like with the concussion, I had some memory issues where my memory wasn't as quick as it used to be. And just a lot of little things, like nothing severe, but enough that it drove me to a different direction. So then again, I just kept studying and reading and kind of doing everything I could to really learn and change my own life for the past, I mean, I'm 25 now. And so the past really 6-7 years has really been kind of a path of discovery. Then about 2017, about 2 years ago now, I went to Asia for about 4 months and lived in Sri Lanka with my friend. He owned a farm and a school. So I was the only American there, and everyone's barefoot and everyone's eating with their hands. It's a very different culture, which I loved. And it was just a very eye-opening experience. And they're all Buddhists, so living with Buddhists for a while. Then going out to Thailand, doing some meditation retreats. So it's really been a progressive journey. It's been a hell of a ride. It's been a lot of fun, but everything has really just been a stepping stone to the next phase. And I kind of taught intermittently over the past 3 or 4 years doing the meditation mindfulness stuff, but really I moved to LA last December, then moved back from LA back to Boston in September of this year. So I was there for about 9 months, and ever since then I've really just gone all in on this whole health connection. So that's the present day.
I don't know if you could see me, but I was writing down a couple of notes there because you touched on so many interesting aspects, right, of your life, where you had this concussion and clearly you took up this passion, not just for learning, right, because you could learn about anything, but you started really learning more about your body and your mind, and you were experiencing these different memory issues, and clearly you started seeing some results. And going to Sri Lanka, hanging out with Buddhists, going to Thailand and hanging out with Buddhists, like that's not something that most people have a chance to do. Like I would love to experience that for a little bit in my life, just to see what that is, right?
Yeah, it was definitely 4 of the best months of my life, and it was so just different. Again, being the only American there, and me being, I mean, I'm a tall white guy, so I stood out like a sore thumb. So people look at me like, they don't. Most of them don't have internet, they don't have TV. So my friend is saying, a lot of these people have never seen a white male before, and like again, I'm tall and I'm standing out like a sore thumb. So it's just a very humbling experience to just have all eyes on me. But it wasn't like in a looking down type of way. It's just a pure curiosity. Yeah. And people would ask, like, why is this guy here? Like, where is he from? Like, and just so many questions. It was just so cool to really be in such a culture shock. And again, it was a very growing experience.
Yeah. And you have to do that, right? I mean, as we know, like, you got to step out of your comfort zone, and that's the way you really start to learn, not just about yourself, but especially the world when you're in a brand new place. Because a lot of folks out there, including myself, in certain situations where you're going to a brand new place, you know nothing about it, and especially when you're the sole white person and people are looking at you, maybe even like questioning, like you just said, like why you're there and what you're doing. It, like you said, it's such a humbling experience, and that's why it makes more sense to me as we go along in the conversation of why you're in this field, because of these really cool experiences. And even going back to what you mentioned about trying out and seeing if the Army and ROTC was for you, but it wasn't, and that's a good thing. I mean, I've tried out lots of different things. I've started an Instagram agency. I had an e-commerce store where I was selling dog t-shirts at one time in my life, and realized that I didn't want to do it. I was doing it just for the money. And so I love the fact that you tried these things out. You really wanted to help, and now you're able to do this through the experiences that you've had to be able to help people. I'm wondering, because you mentioned the woman from school, I believe, when you mentioned this individual who was having an impact on you in the very beginning when you had your concussion and you were getting into yoga and meditation. Like, who from the industry specifically has had the biggest impact or influence on your life, and what lessons specifically did that person or people teach you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Have you ever heard of Elliot Hulse?
I don't think so.
So he is a former strongman, and he owns a gym. It's called Strength Camp in St. Petersburg, Florida. And he has been making YouTube videos for, it's got to be at least a decade now. He's been doing it before it was even really popular. So he is a very much a powerful man physically and mentally and spiritually. And he is just kind of, I found him at a time where I was about that 18, 19, where I was kind of going through this major life shift of transitioning to college and recovering from an injury and trying to find my place in a new school and trying to just really becoming out of my shell of living at home as a high school kid to becoming a young man, essentially. So stumbling upon him, I mean, he's very raw. He's very uninhibited, and he really shows his emotions, but in a very powerful way that just kind of shows you can really be what you want to. And he really kind of describes being a man and how to become a man, because most of us, we don't have that opportunity. We don't have those lessons, where he really talks about like studying tribal ways. They had initiation processes for becoming a man, whether you to hunt a bear or fight through the ranks of whatever. And he really just talks about having this balance of being a tender, aggressive male. So you have the tenderness where you have the capability to love, you have the capability to show your emotions, the capability to not, like, I think we as a society kind of show when you're a man, if you show emotions, oh, you're weak or all whatever.
Right.
All these stereotypes, but he really just shows you can be loving, you can be caring as a man, but also you need to have this aggressive and not aggressive side, meaning not being being an asshole, but being, you have the capability to stand up for what's right, to stand up for what's against what's wrong and all that type of stuff. So really, and he just really showed me about the mind-body balance and really connected all the dots and just showing, as this giant guy who is one of the strongest people I've ever seen, deadlifting hundreds of pounds and bench pressing a small house. And he's just showing like, you can still do yoga and you can still meditate, and you need all these things to be a whole person. And not only just as a man, but as a woman, just as a human being, we need to really focus on the balance and focus on nutrition, focus on breathing and all these things that most of us take for granted, and focusing on sleep, really just being individuals. And that was, again, I've followed him ever since I found him those many years ago. And just going through his phases, it's been interesting to me to just see how he went from the strong man who's lifting these extremely heavy weights and just screaming, just expressing his pure, authentic, raw emotion.
Right.
So now he's now he's doing more yoga and meditation, and just, he has a family and he's raising his family, and he has a wife that he's been married to for all these years, and just showing a very good image of balance and a very good image of being the tender, aggressive male who stands up for what he believes in, but also can be loving and open and expressing himself in a truly authentic way. So that's great. Yeah, he's just been a great mentor that I've never met.
Yeah. And you said Elliot Holtz.
Correct. And Elliot Holtz of Strength Camp is the name of his business.
Awesome. I love so much of what you just said right there, because it's interesting. I'm actually at a point in my life, and I feel like you're never really perfect, but the image that you just painted there of Elliot Holtz, who I'm definitely going to research now and look at Strength Camp and all that stuff, because he, based on your description, he really is living that almost like Renaissance man lifestyle, right? Where he's got the mind, the body, the relationships. I'm sure that he's having fun in his life with his family and his friends as well. And I'm at a point in my life where, I mean, most recently, I went 4 months of not drinking. And I'm not an alcoholic. I've never been. And I've never been like a crazy person that just like loves to get hammered, so to speak, right? But I just said, you know what? It originally started as a 30-day challenge. I did it. And then all because of that, I started getting better sleep. I started eating better, eating salads for lunch at work every single day, tracking my calories in my Fitness Pal, and doing so many more things, working out 3, 4, 5 days a week, working out with a trainer for the last 4 months. But during that 4-month span of not drinking a single lick of alcohol, that had such a huge impact on me to create this life that I personally have. And it's not perfect, but what you just said is so pointed toward how I've been feeling as of late. And now this is a guy that, like I said, I'm definitely going to look up because I'm at the most balance that I've ever had in my entire life. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah, I can definitely say from experience too. I mean, I definitely drank more than was good for me in college. I think like a lot of us do.
Yeah,
but then
we all
after
do.
I graduated, yeah, exactly. And then after I graduated though, and then I started traveling and doing all these things, and the opportunity to drink just wasn't really there because I was in these places and it just wasn't really an option or it didn't make sense.
Right.
And now really since I graduated, I mean, it'll be 3 years this spring from college. I really have not drank much at all. And just as you said, like my life is I just feel like I have so much more mental clarity, and now sleep is much higher on my priority. And I just feel like, I mean, alcohol is a poison. It's a poison to our system. And no matter how you slice it, I mean, everything in moderation, I understand that. But at the end of the day, occasionally I still have a drink here and there, but I just don't really enjoy getting drunk anymore because I know like if I'd feel better when I'm exercising, moving, meditating, doing these things. I feel better, and honestly, I still feel like I can go out to a bar and socialize better when I'm
100%
sober or a drink. And
it's a distraction. It's a distraction, right? It's taken away from who you truly are. And I'm curious.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've said so many really awesome things, and I always love learning about new mentors. Like you said, even if you've never actually physically met the person, I have a ton of folks like Jim Rohn, Napoleon Hill, Les Brown that I've never met that I listen to all the time to help motivate me and inspire me and make sure that I have that mental clarity. But I'm wondering, like, if you could teach everyone in the world, because you cover so many bases, it seems like, Rob, which is awesome. If you could teach one concept from your coaching, what concept would have the biggest impact or positive impact on society if adopted?
Yeah, so this was the question that I had the most trouble with because it's hard to pinpoint one. But I do think that I think that there is one main piece, and then I kind of have two little sub pieces to that.
Sure.
And I think the main piece, and I want to preface this by saying I'm still very early on in my journey. I'm not claiming to have life figured out or any of these things. I'm just sharing my experience and what's true to me at this moment.
We're all figuring it out, man.
Yeah, and we
100%.
always will be. That's the beauty.
Always learning, baby.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it really comes down to is we need purpose, and we need to find that one thing that we love doing, and that thing that we would do whether we got paid for it or not. And I think that's really just, in a nutshell, at the end of the day, we're all looking for purpose. We're all looking for meaning in this world. And I think what it really comes down to is if you had to choose one thing to set your life towards, it's like find your purpose. And again, for me, as I share with my story, it's like I thought I knew, but it changes and adapts. And you got to flip over stones and realize there's some scorpions under there, and like, damn, I want to stay away from that. That's not for me. But you got to flip those stones to know if they are for you.
Yep.
And I really think that having kind of gone down this journey, and again, it's always going to continue and it never will end, but once you find that purpose, or even the purpose for now, like it doesn't have to be your ultimate purpose to the day you die, but just right now, I feel like everything else falls into place. Like even just something like this podcast we're doing right now, like this would not be happening if we weren't on our purposes. Like I think we both have clear intentions of we want to make an impact in this world. We want to do something that's for the greater good. And really just the more you put your focus and intent on something, things just to work out. And obviously that's not to say there's going to be challenges. It's going to be really freaking hard.
Oh, always.
It's not going to be
always.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of sacrifice, and there's going to be a lot, like right now, it's like financially there's sacrifices because I'm starting a business, and like I understand that, and I'm looking at the long-term plan, and I'm looking for more fulfillment rather than the financial bonus right now. But again, I think that this is, once we have purpose, we have direction. And for me, what I've really noticed is that now, where I used to be bored when I was by myself, it's like I have 18 different things I can do at any given time. And anytime, even if the thought of boredom crosses my mind, now it's just like I just think of my purpose and be like, all right, I have time. How grateful am I to have this time that I can work on these things that I didn't have time to do earlier. So it's really just shifting the mindset. So even just
Mm.
as I said, when I am like, I just always have something to do. And even if I don't, I'll think of something like, oh, like, what could I do right now? All right, I have
Yeah,
nothing to do. Maybe
because you're
I'll read a little
inspired.
bit.
Yeah, you're inspired
Exactly.
by what you do, and it doesn't feel like work, right? And
Exactly.
I love, and
Exactly.
I love that you mentioned purpose, because it's something that I personally have struggled with for years. I mean, my first mentor in personal development was Napoleon Hill. So many people
Great.
out there, you may have heard of this book, maybe not. Think and Grow Rich. I actually started
One of
with
my favorites.
yeah,
One of my favorites.
I actually started with his first book, which came before Think and Grow Rich, called The Law of Success, which is like this 700, 800 page book. But the whole premise, and I won't go into a ton of detail about it, but the very first thing is what he calls a definite major purpose, right? That's the first law of success, that if you do not know where you're going, any road will take you there. And he makes this analogy of being almost sitting on a sailboat, right, in the middle of the ocean, and you are moving left and right and forward and backwards because of the stray winds of circumstance, right? And I
Yep.
learned about this concept, and it was so difficult because I didn't really know what that was for me. I tried out so many different businesses. Like, I personally created an app after I left college, which failed. I worked on that for 2.5 years, lived at home with my parents, was living off my savings, had student loans that I needed to pay. And when your parents are your investors in your business and they're asking you every single day how things are going, and you don't really have a good answer because you're testing things out and whatever, it was a really stressful time. And it was really tough for me to figure out what was my purpose then. And over the years of trying out different projects for me, and with Positive Corey and this podcast, I've learned that my purpose is to spread that positivity onto other people so that they take action, and all of us take action on the things that they want to actually go after and do, and not feel embarrassed or disdained or whatever by other people and the critics out there. Because when you're, like you just said a moment ago, Rob, like when you're doing what it is that you want to do and you're impassioned by it, it doesn't feel like work, and people can sense that, and your brand can grow, and you can go even further. So I'm wondering, like you just mentioned so many different things about purpose and intent. I'm wondering, like, what other areas for you with purpose are just like the most important pieces that you feel like those listening out there need to understand about that concept?
Yeah, so I think that purpose is the number one overarching theme. And again, I think after that everything falls into place. But with that, I think the other two are balance and patience. And balance being yin and yang, just like for the yang movements, like you're exerting, you're exercising, the yin being the restorative yoga, the meditation, the sleeping, the nutrition, the hydration, the things that fuel you being the yin, and the yang being like how you breathe, how you exercise, how you move, like all these, how you think even, and all these things that just are active, and really finding the balance between the two. And that's why I put such a priority on sleep right now, because I mean, some people say like, oh, I only need 5-6 hours sleep. And I'm like, I need 9 to 10 most nights in the winter. Summer's a little different. I can get by with less in summer, but again, I kind of go with the seasons. I've really kind of gotten more in tune with my body. Notice that this time of year, I need about 9.5 hours of sleep to be, I mean, I can get by with a lot less, but to be optimal, I need that 9.5. And that's the balance that works for me.
Yeah.
And that really helps my waking hours be much more effective. And so I can communicate with people, because when you're working with people and talking with people, you have to be present, and to be present, you have to be well rested. So really a lot of that just comes down to, if I want to be listening to people, which that's a lot of what I do, I need to be well awake and well aware and very present on the moment, which again requires that balance of yin and yang, and knowing when it's my time to step in and be like, all right, you got to take some action, you got to do this shit, but like also stepping back, like, all right, they just need to talk right now. And just finding the balance, every little aspect of life, but in knowing that everyone's balance is different. As I said, like for me right now, I need 9.5 hours of sleep to be optimal, but for you, it could be 7 hours, and that could be optimal. And everybody is so different. And what the so-called experts out there say is like, you have to have 8 hours of sleep, or you have to have this. Again, that's just an average. That's not what everybody needs. And knowing that everyone is so different, and just finding your own balance. But on the same breath, there's going to be periods where we have to embrace the periods of imbalance, because that's part of just like sometimes, like when I first started my business, the launch back in September, I had to embrace a period of imbalance where I was just working a lot of times 12 to 16 hours a day for 7 days a week, but because I had to get things off the ground and I knew it wasn't going to be forever. But that was just a period of imbalance that I had to embrace to get things rocking and rolling. Now it's more of a lifestyle, and it's not, because a lot of that was building a website and doing all the things that aren't as fun sometimes. So, but again, just embracing the periods of imbalance, and then leads me into the other one, which is patience, and knowing that in this world of instant gratification, where we can go onto Instagram or Netflix and be stimulated by all these colors and all these sayings and all this everything, you have the world at your fingertips now. But just knowing that everything takes time. Most things take time, and in realizing, like, I'm aware that whatever my business is going to be, it's probably going to take a year before I can come, or more. I don't really have a definitive number of how long it's going to be before I can comfortably live off this and go back to traveling while I'm working and all these type of things that I love doing.
Right.
But again, just I'm patient with the process because I enjoy the process. I really love the process and not as much the outcome.
Right.
And again, I think it really just comes down to, as I said, the purpose is number one, and then kind of the two below that are just the balance and the patience. And I think once you kind of focus on those three things, again, speaking from experience, I don't want to act like I'm wildly successful by any means, but what it has built me happiness, I think that's what I would.
Well, then you are successful, right? If you're waking up, if you're waking up every day and you're happy with yourself and the way that you're living your life, I mean, we get so bogged down that we're definitely not going to go down this path per se. Definitely made for another conversation, but we live in a society, right, where it's so money driven, it's so capital driven, which you need, like, because to me, I mean, money gives you freedom. Money gives you freedom to be able to do the things you want. You just mentioned, like, being able to travel, go do things, and grow your business, right? But at the end of the day, I mean, with PositiveCorey, I mean, this is a business in and of itself too. But I've realized now that there's more value to be given to other people through interviews like this with you, Rob, and other folks that will be joining this podcast along the way, but providing value in the form of new philosophy, in the form of new ideas and ways that people can better their lives and improve their lives. And so I'm trying to think, because I came across a quote, and for those who do follow me, you notice through my stories and on my posts that I'm always posting a lot of other people's thoughts, because a lot of it comes from other people, right? Most things come from other people as opposed to things being completely original. And I've learned that it's about value. And when you're giving as much value as you possibly can, given your resources and your means, that's when money starts to flow in. And that's the philosophy that I've adopted recently. And we'll see. But the more that you engage with people and you provide value and things that they actually need, right, that's when money is just inevitably going to come in. That's what all the successful people that have ever made it ever say. But it's the hardest thing for us to adopt when we're not quite there yet, because we're not there yet. And we're living in a society and a corporate life a lot of times that sometimes tends to make us think in that way when we don't want to.
Definitely. No, I agree 100% with that. And one of your questions that you mentioned earlier about what prevents people from doing this and going down finding their purpose. Yeah. I think it really just comes down to fear, and that's fear of rejection, fear of not making it, fear of not being good enough. And most of that fear is based on other people's opinions. Yeah. And I think the number one thing I'd recommend to everyone listening to this is go on Audible, find The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson.
I've read that book. That's awesome.
That book, I've listened to that book a good 5 or 6 times, because any time that I found myself like being in a funk where I was like worried about other people's opinions over my own, which we all get caught in those funks every once in a while, I listen to that book and I'm like, who cares? Like, if I know what I'm doing is true and authentic to me, and there are people, like, I don't have to please everyone. That's not my job. But if every post helps one person, that's worth it to me. And that's, again, I've really let go of the fear of being accepted, the fear of not making, the fear of not being good enough. And that's okay. Like, I think it's important to notice our fears and really find what is our fears, and then really trying to just tackle them head on and just do some intensive work internally, just find why and just find that why. Usually the why is not even a big deal. Usually doesn't even matter at the end of the day, but it's like we have these implanted thoughts of fear that we should be looking for acceptance. And of course, to some human degree, we're always looking to be accepted by a certain group of people, but obviously then there's got to find the balance is what it comes back to.
I love that. Yeah, finding the balance between pleasing everybody, which is never going to happen, like you just said, and us as humans, the validation aspect is so key. That's why I love compliments, but it's not flattery, right? It's literally just complimenting some a woman's hairstyle that looks really awesome. Because why did she do it? She did it so that people can make comments about it in a positive way like that. She wants that validation. So I love that, and I love that you just mentioned the the Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which is a great book. I would also recommend, because you mentioned the why, Simon Sinek's most recent book called Find Your Why, which is one of the most important books that I've read up to date, because it really sets a really good outline for figuring that out. What are some other strategies or tips or techniques, Rob? Because you mentioned purpose, you mentioned balance, you mentioned patience. And I've never really thought about it in that sort of triangle, if you will, before, which I love. What are some strategies or techniques for folks to try out at home, so to speak, if maybe they're struggling with finding their purpose, or they don't have enough balance in their life, or they just want things done super quick and they have trouble really being patient? What would you recommend to those folks?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that 99% of the population can do, barring any major injury, is just walking. And just knowing that the mind and body are so connected, and we live in a very sedentary lifestyle, that just getting outside, breathing fresh air, just moving, no matter what, whether it's walking, running, sprinting, whatever the movement is, just getting outside and moving the body. And I can just, when I go on walks, if I'm ever like stuck or puzzled on some sort of issue, I'll put that in quotation marks, any sort of issue going on, usually if I go for a walk, just walk by myself or take my dog or whatever, and just allow myself to kind of just think and breathe and move, usually what I'm looking for will come out. I'll kind of find that answer just by moving. Yeah. And then if I don't, the next thing is I'll go to meditation. And meditation is kind of, again, a still mind is a still body. So by just being still, it kind of quiets the mind. And obviously there's many different ways to meditate, and meditation is a skill, which that's the one thing I always emphasize to people when I'm teaching the classes on meditation, is it's not something that you just can do or you can't. Like, people say I can't meditate. It's like, because you haven't tried. And it's a skill, just like learning guitar. You can't expect to pick up a guitar and be able to play the best song instantly. And I do have some guided meditations on my YouTube channel if anyone wants to check those out. It's like I have a 17-minute one up there. I'm going to be putting up another one this week.
Awesome.
So there's a lot of ways, and I do teach classes if anyone is in the Boston area. I do some introductory classes there, but I think that meditation and walking are the easiest per se, in terms of just, you don't need any resources whatsoever. You need nothing to do that. You need no financial input or anything, or any device or anything like that. So I'd say those two kind of to start. And then the next one I'd say is journaling, or even writing. One of my clients, he said he likes to write poems, and that's his expressive way of writing. And for me, I have a journal, and I like to write my thoughts, especially if I had a great day. I like to write the things I'm grateful for. Or if I had a tough day, I'll write the things like, why did this happen? Like, why did I react this way, or whatever it may be. And then I think the other one too is with it on the tough day type of thing, is sitting with and feeling through our shadows and the shadow versions of ourselves, and our dark spots, the places that we tend to run away from because they're scary, and they're parts of ourselves we don't necessarily like and we don't want to show or express. So just really working through those dark thoughts, and again, kind of finding the root cause. If we're feeling depressed or feeling anxious or whatever it is, just taking the time to work through it, because a lot of times those are our best teachers. Like we usually learn more from our mistakes, and we learn more from the moments that are not as pleasant than we do the pleasant ones. And I think that by being able to go into these areas that are uncomfortable, we grow substantially just because we know we can conquer these things. And rather than letting our thoughts control us, we can really work through a lot of these things I think a lot of us have been conditioned to really cover up and avoid pain, whether it be through pharmaceuticals, the Band-Aid approach. You don't treat the root cause. So I think really finding our root cause and working through it is very powerful and has definitely transformed my life in terms of just relationships with people, where I felt like if I was passive aggressive type of thing, or I was kind of reactive, like I can really kind of find out why and avoid that in the future. So yeah, the long answer to your question: journaling, meditation, walking, and then dealing with and working through the shadows.
I love every single one of those things that you just said. And it's interesting because I have a couple of follow-up questions. So the journaling is actually something that I recently got into. So what I do, I don't even know if you can see this, but for starting last year, what I did is at the very top of the page, I write down what my purpose is, helping people feel more positive so they take action and go after what they want. And I write down just like the highlights from the day. Like I could look back back on May 7th, 2018, and very first thing, like I got up at 6 a.m. and went to Flywheel, which I don't know if for other folks that aren't familiar with Flywheel, it's like competitive spin class where you're competing against other people in there based on speed and resistance on the bike. For a competitive person like me, I love it. And I met a woman named Linda, who's an absolute savage, who gets a super high score every day, but I approached her and had a great conversation with her. But just like very simple things that I would literally never remember that unless I wrote that down, and I can look at that and say, wow, that was actually the actual real side of Corey. And I love that you mentioned that the demon or the shadows, as you said a second ago, Rob. And I wanted to follow up on that concept with you real quick. I'm wondering, because for people maybe where it's hard or it's stressful, right, to think about those shadow sides, what sort of tips would you give on getting past that or like growing from that? Because a lot of folks out there, it's tough to deal with a lot of the demons and things that have happened in the past, and it's hard for them to get over those types of things. So what would you recommend to people who are in that type of situation?
I think the number one thing anytime we're faced with any sort of conflict or scary situation where it really comes down to we are stressed, anxious, whatever, breathing at the end of the day is the most powerful tool we have in our arsenal. Because I mean, you think about it, breathing is life. Oxygen is how, like, you can go days without food, you can go days without water, you can only go a couple of minutes without breathing.
Very true.
And so many of us, we stifle our breaths, we breathe very shallowly into our chest. And if you like, when I'm doing the meditation classes and stuff, the first thing we do is we start breathing. That's the number one thing, because as soon as you start getting in tune with your breath, you're getting in tune with your life force, the thing that fuels your body. So most often what I try to do, a lot of times if I'm having a tough conversation with someone, I'll just take that moment to take in a deep breath. And even that, just that split second can completely change your response or how you'd react. So true. And a lot of people, I mean, like in between a stimulus and our response, we have a choice. And in that choice is where our life is made. So I
love that.
Yeah, I wish I could credit whoever said that, because I love that.
Yeah,
too. It's one of
that's
my
a great one. It's very deep.
Yeah, so it's like every time something like whatever stimulus is, someone yells at you, like you mess up or whatever, and then you're going to respond. In between that split second, you have that choice. And I think just by breathing, most of the time, one, we're grounding ourselves, and just by doing, I believe it's 3 deep belly breaths can reduce our cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone, primary stress hormone, by up to 80%. So just by doing 3 deep intentional belly breaths can completely change our body's chemistry. And actually, I was listening on a podcast today that said by doing 6 of those, you can even start to lower your blood pressure. So it's crazy. And I mean, have you ever heard of Wim Hof?
I don't believe so.
So he hiked Mount Everest in just shorts, boots.
Oh, I have. He's the crazy guy who does the stuff with the ice water, right? Or
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he is all about breathing. He has just shown how much breath can just change our lives. And that's been one of the people that I can't say I've studied him nearly as much as someone like Elliot Hulse, but just doing some of his techniques, they're just so powerful. And those are the things that when we are facing these challenging situations, whether it be our inner demons or the shadows or whatever the challenge is, the ability to breathe just grounds ourselves and makes us more present. And most of the time, the things that we're worried about, the shadows, the demons, usually they're either in the past or the future.
Right.
They're things that happened and we're still clinging to, or we're worried about happening in the future.
Right.
So by really allowing ourselves to get present, which again comes with walking. When you're walking, you're becoming present. When you're meditating, you're becoming present. When you're breathing, you're journaling. These are all present things. And the journaling, I think, is good because you kind of get a lot of that mental clutter out of your head and you get it onto something else. Like it's really just pulling something out, putting it onto paper. And to me, I think that's a very powerful way is that I think it's Certified Health Net, I believe. He says that we're human garbage disposals where we take everything in, but we don't let anything out. We kind of just have all these thoughts and stuff come in and all these emotions, but we're not trained to express them and to release. We're active breathing and walking and journaling. It's an active way of just releasing a lot of this pent-up energy, these pent-up thoughts and emotions. So that's really, I think, my advice is just you got to breathe, you got to move, and you got to express yourself.
100%. I mean, that's what we're doing here, right? We're just talking about ideas and we're sharing new thoughts, and maybe they're not new to you, but they're new to I didn't know that you could, with this, just by doing those belly breaths, that you could impact your body in such a crazy way that's so simple. We're not taught those things, but there's so much information out there that, going back to like finding your purpose, like you mentioned before, of once we're interested and then we start learning about it even more. I was never someone who enjoyed reading books, and it wasn't until I got into personal development and reading up on Napoleon Hill, Brian Tracy, all these crazy guys that just thought so simply. And I'm like, wow, why have I never come across this before? And it was because you become a character where you detest books just from going to school and reading things that you're not necessarily into, but you're being forced to read them. And once you find that thing, and certainly you have, Rob, as you mentioned a couple of times, of finding your passion, and clearly you have it just from like the enthusiasm that I can clearly hear in your voice on our call today. And it's just, it's great to be able to connect with folks that know more than you do and are willing to share that knowledge and want to actually help improve people's lives. And I love what you're doing and everything that we've shared so far.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think it really does come back to it. It is simple, but we've kind of lost touch with the simplicity that really, I mean, in my training, the Chek, Paul Chek, he's the head guy of the Chek Institute where I'm doing my holistic lifestyle training.
Yeah.
And he talks about, it comes down to 6 foundation principles. You got to breathe, think, move, hydrate, nutrition, and I can't remember if I said breathing. So 6 foundation principles. So it's just really focusing on the yin and yang, and just really, it really is that simple. And if you do those 6, if you breathe, you think, you move, you sleep, you hydrate, and you have good nutrition, that's a pretty good formula. And it really is that simple. But again, we've lost touch, as we talked about earlier, is we kind of chase things that aren't really meaningful, but we've been conditioned to believe are. So at the end of the day, it really is that simple. We just got to reconnect with the simplicity of life and really learning from nature. Because I mean, nature is our greatest teacher. That it doesn't react to it doesn't react if they had a bad day at the office or whatever. It's just like
it just is. Living. It just is
exactly.
So, I love it. Because I'm a huge believer, and I'm sure that you and anyone following my Instagram, like I'm a huge believer in the law of attraction. I've had so many weird things that have happened to me over the course of my personal life, my career, with job opportunities, just all of a sudden coming out of nowhere. And for just very quick anecdote, I actually quit my job. I used to work at a company called HubSpot here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And that's where I got really involved with marketing. And I was at a really small tech advertising company before that, where I was the first employee. We grew that team to about 16 people. I left to go to HubSpot. In a year and a half, like I just couldn't take the sales life anymore. I love people, which is why I'm doing this podcast, right? But to be able to learn and talk to folks and ask questions, and realize that life just, it wasn't for me anymore. So I ended up quitting my job. I started that e-commerce store selling dog t-shirts, made a couple $1,000, lost money on it, was living at home with my folks, and had a really tough time where when you leave a high profile company, and I don't, for anyone that doesn't know HubSpot, it's always voted one of the best places to work in Boston. And I'll always have great things to say about that place. It taught me so much about me, my character. Was able to go to President's Club and went to Lisbon, Portugal for free for 4 or 5 days with one of my best friends and about 300 other employees. So I'll never say anything bad about it because it taught me so much. I just learned that, and you mentioned this before with your ROTC experience, Rob, where you did it and you realized that it just wasn't for you, but you wanted to help people. That company that I was with before HubSpot ended up getting acquired by another company called Wayfair in the Boston area. And before that happened, I was at a really rough stretch where I was looking for work and I didn't know what I was going to do. And a lot of people didn't want to hire me because when you leave a job and you start your own thing, a lot of times people just don't want people like that in their corporate life because they think you're going to leave again. And they have a valid point. They have a valid point there. But I guess the point that I'm trying to make is the old co-founders at my old job called me up and said, "Hey, Corey, I don't know if you're interested, but we got this really cool thing going on at Wayfair. And I think that you'd really be great for it. And you should come check it out." And literally, like, I don't know, anytime I've ever had this mindset of things will just work out regardless of whatever I'm going through, they always have. And that's why I love the fact that you mentioned patience before and finding that balance and having that purpose, because things will just happen. And certainly when you're living those 6 truths, as you mentioned a second ago, breathing, thinking, moving, sleeping, hydrating, nutrition, when you're doing all the things right for your body, nature finds a way. And sometimes it's not immediate, and most times it's not, but it tends to find a way to give back to people like that are actually doing the things that nature says, "Hey, Rob, hey, Corey, you're doing and following the rules of life. So we're going to benefit you and reward you for that."
Definitely. 100%. Yeah, I got nothing to add to that. You pretty much said it pretty eloquently. So
Perfect. Well, to wrap things up here, obviously this was a fantastic conversation, and this was the first version of hopefully many interviews and podcast renditions with the PositiveCorey podcast. And mentioned at the beginning that, and Rob, correct me if I miss anything here, but we have a gift, a special treat for everybody who has decided to continue and listen to our back and forth here, talking about life and different philosophies. And for all those who have listened today, Rob is kind enough to provide a free copy of his most recent booklet, which is Stress Control, 37 Strategies to Lower Your Stress. And I'm sure I haven't had a chance to read it. I'm grabbing my free copy. I definitely want to take a look after our conversation today, because I'm sure some of the points that we've talked about are in there, and many other points are in there that we haven't had a chance to talk about. But in order to receive that copy, just DM Rob at his Instagram account, which is Whole Health Connections, or send Rob an email at wholehealthconnections@gmail.com, and we will send over a free copy of that booklet. And Rob, I don't know if you have anything else to add there in terms of folks getting their free booklet from you, which I'm personally excited to take a look at.
Yeah, so basically, I was thinking about this, and I think that what I'd love to see everyone do, just so we can have a little bit of a dialogue. So if you're going to be emailing me or DMing me on Instagram, just shoot me in the subject in the email, just PositiveCorey Podcast, so I can kind of pick that up right away. And just in the body or in the DM, just send me your favorite quote. And I'm just interested, just so we can kind of exchange energy in a sense, and I can kind of learn more about you guys out there as we can build our team together and really engage with the audience and everything. So I would love to just hear your favorite quote. Can be recent, all time, whatever it is. And yeah, I'll send that right back to you in the reply. So again, feel free to send me a follow on Instagram. Check out the Facebook page, and on the Instagram has a link to the Twitter, YouTube, my website, and all that. But just to recap, as Corey said, it's Whole Health Connections is the tag on Instagram, and the website is wholehealthconnects.com with the email wholehealthconnections@gmail.com. And as I believe we mentioned earlier, I do teach meditation, mindfulness, stress relief classes, as well as some combo meditation yoga classes with some other practitioners. And I've been building a network of practitioners in the holistic health world, acupuncture, massage, Reiki, all that good stuff. So if you ever need anything, you're in the Boston area, South Shore, feel free to reach out and I'll get you to the right place.
Yeah, give this guy a look, y'all. This is an incredible conversation today. Anybody in the Boston area, check out Rob, check out the Whole Health Connections. Either way, get your free booklet. I'm getting mine right after this podcast is over. Stress Control, 37 Strategies to Lower Your Stress, completely free just by listening to our podcast today. And on that note, Rob, really appreciate the time today, man, and looking forward to continuing our new friendship and relationship together and learning from each other. So appreciate your time, and thanks for coming on the podcast, man.
Absolutely, my man. Appreciate you setting this up, and we'll definitely be in touch soon. And I'll send you that booklet right away. And again, thanks for having me, and thanks for listening.
Absolutely. And thank you to everybody out there that tuned in today. Look for more Positive Corey podcast episodes coming up in the near future, and we'll see you soon.